Hi, thanks for checking out my channel where we ask the question, what's that all about? So this is part two to my Bizarre Disappearance series, and I want to get started pretty quickly because there's a lot of detail in these two cases that I want to present to you today. I'm not sure if the names were familiar to you, but they're pretty press-friendly cases. I'll just say that. And if you like this video, please subscribe, comment, and we'll just get right to it. The first case I'm going to tell you about is Asha Degree. She was 9 years old and she lived in Shelby, North Carolina. She was a shy young girl. And on a day where, people are getting ready to give Valentines and candies and chocolates and be silly about, just love in general, Asha took her backpack and some candy and left the safety of her home and started walking along North Carolina's Highway 18. And this was despite heavy rain and wind. So she was walking on a highway in a storm. Now, several passing motorists reported seeing her. And when one turned around and started to approach her, she was at this point about 1.3 miles from her home. So when they got close to her, she ran into some woods. And in the morning, when her parents discovered her missing, they started a search. No one has seen her since. So an intensive search did start that day, and the discovery of some personal effects were found in that woods that the parents identified as hers. But it would be a year and a half later until her book bag turned up, and it was still packed. And it was discovered at a construction site along Highway 18. So she possibly didn't get far. She was just north of Shelby and Morganton, as the map shows here. At first, investigators considered Asha as a runaway, but there was really no reason for that. Parents and investigators couldn't figure out why that would be, because their household was really happy, very family-oriented, church on Sundays sort of place. And she was only 9. She was only 9 years old, and it's a lot younger than a normal runaway's age is. And a few things I found odd and interesting that I wanted to tell you about was these few things. On February 12th, so leading up to Asha's basketball team, on which she was a star point guard, they lost its first game of the season, and Asha was fouled out. Now, she took this very hard. She cried, and so did some of her other teammates, though. They were very upset. They're 9, Things are bigger when you're 9. And but she seemed to get over it pretty quickly, because she did stay and watch her brother's basketball game afterward, and she seemed okay. So, nothing really of note. It's not like she acted any different than any of the other kids, right? So now they went home, and she and her brother were something called latchkey kids, or that's what I call them, because after reading about them, it struck a familiar sound for me, because I was like a latchkey kid with my brother. And not all the time. My mom usually was home for us and everything. But I mean, there were days where you just, get the hideaway key, go in, get your snacks, start your homework, that kind of stuff, And Asha had a brother older brother by a year, and his name was O'Brien. And on February 13th, Asha and her brother went to church with some relatives. Everything's normal. Parents were working. And, at 8 o'clock, after church, they went home. Nothing unusual. O'Brien, her brother, was interviewed. He said nothing was out of the ordinary. They went home and went to bed at 8 o'clock, just like they always did. They shared a room. The brother and sister did share a room. And about an hour after they were in bed, they didn't know this happened, but a car accident had occurred in the neighborhood and had bumped out all the power. Now, normally I wouldn't think of that as anything unusual, but for some reason, when I did the research, they mentioned it. So I thought maybe there's something unusual about that. But now, Harold, their father, had gone, and when the power came back on at 12:30, the father had gone in to look in on the kids, and they were sleeping in their beds. Nothing was unusual, all good. And then he stayed up a little later, until about 2:30, and checked on them just one more time. Still all good, no problem. And shortly after that, Asha's brother heard her bed squeak, and he figured she was simply rolling over. So he went back to sleep. He didn't even sit up and look over or nothing. He just went right back to sleep. Wasn't an unusual sound, happened all the time. Now, apparently around this time, Asha got out of bed, took the book bag that she had previously packed before this night, or morning at this point, and between 3:45 and 4:15, like I said, she left and started on her way. So now, by February 22nd of 2000, both FBI and the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigations were involved in the search. And the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children quickly ruled out a runaway situation because she was only 9. And normally, I guess, runaways don't start hitting the streets until about 12, which, God, that's so young. Still babies. But it wasn't until August 3rd of 2001, that's when her book bag was found, and it was in a plastic bag. That, to me, reeks of foul play. It sounds like cover-up stuff to me. I know that the FBI took everything and had it tested, but as is the usual, that information, that the results of that information were not shared publicly, which I can understand the investigation still ongoing. So in February of 2015, the FBI announced that they would be reopening the case. And then they also offered a reward. Sometimes a reward really can light a fire when you want to reignite an investigation, which sucks, personally, I think. You should want to find, especially a little girl who's 9 years old and probably is scared out of her mind or hurt or worse. But, there were false leads all over the place. There was an inmate that came forward and said that, he knew where her body was buried. Turns out it was just dead animal bones, putting the family through that. But to this day, they continue. They've done over 300 interviews, and there's been no signs of her. So that's, this tragedy just keeps getting piled up. But her parents aren't giving up, and nobody is really. The investigators are even still, really trying to make a go of that investigation. So if you ever see a little girl who looks anything like that picture that I showed you earlier, please call your local authorities. Okay. The next one, I bet you've heard of. I had heard of it a lot. And the year was 2004, and they called this the kind of like the first social media internet crime mystery, even though it still left a lot of questions, which still exist today. But the name of the missing person is Maura Murray. She was 21 years old. She disappeared on February 9th of 2004. She also went missing after a car crash, which in my previous video, I mentioned a few car-related issues with Patricia Meehan and Brandon Swanson. They both had car-related disappearances, which I find interesting. But Maura's car crash happened on Route 112 near Woodsville, New Hampshire. She was a 21-year-old nursing student completing her junior year at UMass Amherst. And when she disappeared, the first thing that struck me was that she clearly was going through a lot. After I did the research, it's very clear that she had a lot of triggers around her. But let me tell you about some of them so that you can sort of get the same idea maybe I got. So in November of 2003, 3 months prior to her disappearance, she admitted to using a credit card, a stolen credit card, to buy food from several restaurants. Now, due to good behavior, after 3 months, the charges were cleared off her record. So, no harm, no foul, but still very unusual behavior for her, according to family and friends. So, fast forward to February 5th, 2004. While she was on duty at her campus security job, Morris spoke with her sister, Kathleen. Her sister, Kathleen, had a fiance and they were having issues, and reportedly, Maura broke down at about 10:30 after they had spoken, and her supervisor said that when he arrived at her desk, she was just, and I quote, completely zoned out, no reaction at all. She was unresponsive. So the supervisor escorted her back to her dorm room around 1:20 a.m. And when Maura was asked what was wrong, she replied 2 words: my sister. Now, the contents of the call between her and her sister didn't come to light until October of 2017, when Kathleen finally came forward and disclosed that the conversation they had was about the fact that she's a recovering alcoholic, had just left rehab, and her fiance had stopped at a liquor store on the way home the same day. So that caused a complete emotional breakdown for both Kathleen and then in turn for Maura, feeling awful about the whole thing. So that's a huge trigger, I would say, without question. And then Saturday, February 7th, Maura's father arrived at Amherst to take her car shopping. So later, they spent the day together. Later on, a friend of Maura's and her dad, they all went to dinner together. Everybody seemed fine. And she actually borrowed her dad's Toyota Corolla and dropped him off at his motel, and she went back to the campus to go to a dorm party. And she arrived at the party at about 10:30 p.m. and left around 2:30 in the morning, and was going to be heading back out to the motel where her dad was staying to return the car. Now, on the way out there, she struck a guardrail on Route 9, and she caused about $10,000 worth of damage to her father's car. Another huge stressor, right? It stressed me out just reading it. I said, oh my God, at that age, it's the end of times. And but no sobriety tests were given or anything like that. The responding officer didn't do anything like that. He just drove her to the motel where her father was. And actually, that same morning, she used her father's cell phone to call her boyfriend. And, just the contents of that call are not known. He never disclosed what they talked about. But later on Sunday morning, Maura's father found out that insurance was going to cover the accident. So what seemed like a really big deal at the time, her father really just kind of reassured her and said, don't worry about it. It's fine. I got a rental. He dropped her off back on campus and really tried to reassure her that all she had to do was just calm down, get the accident reports from, and bring them to the DMV and just get all that done. And they had talked at about 11:30 that night and had agreed to talk the following day. So, he was thinking everything was fine. Now, after midnight on February 9th, Maura used MapQuest for directions to the Berkshires, Burlington, Vermont, and then she also looked into renting a townhouse in Bartlett, New Hampshire. She seems like she was all over the place. It just seemed strange. And then she actually she called the nursing school where she worked, and she told her supervisor that she'd be taking a week off due to a death in the family. That was a lie. There were no deaths in the family. The family confirmed that. So they're not sure why she was doing that. So what ended up happening after that was at 3:30 p.m., She left campus. She withdrew $280, then went to the liquor store, spent $40, and she checked her cell phone at about 4:37, which is the last activity that is shown for her cell phone. And she was just checking messages, and no one, no one's sure where she was going. I'm not even sure she knew where she was going. I mean, she was kind of erratic about the MapQuest directions, going to several different places, making a call to about a townhouse. Now, in Bartlett, New Hampshire, her family they were familiar with that area. They had rented a townhouse there before, so that probably was why she was looking in that area. But still, why then? Why now? It didn't make any sense. So at 7:27 p.m., a report of a car accident came in from a resident off of that lived on Route 112 in Woodsville, New Hampshire. Now, a motorist had stopped at the scene, and they saw the car and a young woman walking around it. She didn't seem injured, it was Maura. She didn't seem injured, but she was shivering and she was really cold. Maura asked the motorist not to call the police. Now, there is a report that says she pleaded with the motorist not to call the police, but he did. Now, at 7:46, the police had arrived, but Maura was gone. Okay. The police noticed red wine spilled in the back seats. There was an empty beer bottle. There were gloves. There was makeup. There was diamond jewelry left. Driving directions to Burlington, Vermont, and Maura's favorite stuffed animal, and a book called Not Without Peril, which is a book about mountain climbing in the White Mountains. And the only things missing were her debit card, credit card, cell phone, and some of the bottles of liquor that she had purchased earlier that day. So a massive search began. Police dogs tracked one of Maura's gloves about 100 yards east, and then the scent went dead. The police suspected that she possibly got into a car. That's why the scent ended. And on February 11th, Maura's boyfriend received a phone call that he suspected was her. All he heard on the phone was sobbing. And that was traced to be issued from the American Red Cross. Now, there was nothing, they weren't able to trace that. They weren't able to locate where it was actually used. And, there have really been no credible sightings of her since. So her family does believe that she met with foul play at some point. They had a lot going on with the police that was not great, and they feel that they really botched the investigation. But they do believe that she has been killed to this day. So, but again, very suspicious, very bizarre circumstances for her disappearance. So I wanted to share that with you. And if you liked this episode, please subscribe, comment, try to figure out what's that all about. Again, we'll just keep going forward. I know that I'm going to put a show together for, UAP sightings and exciting stuff like that that's coming out. And I hope you'd be happy, and I hope you are happy and healthy. Stay weird. Take care. Bye.